Welcome back to the Artie Lange Show. My first guest, as accomplished as someone can be in this business. I'm telling you. He's got a daily 4-hour radio show. And he is one of the leading Beatles scholars in the world, which is something I could talk about forever with somebody. I'm such a huge Beatles guy. But unfortunately, I'm not as knowledgeable as I'd like to be in it. This guy is. And he's interviewed and hung out with musicians as prolific as you could imagine and as impressive as you could imagine, from Pete Townsend to Sting to Clapton, Joe Perry. I worked with Amnesty International. This is Martin Lewis. I could go on and on. Martin Lewis is here. What's up, buddy?
Hi, good to see you again. No, it's my job to go on and on.
Yeah.
I just go on and on all the time. When you say accomplished, I think that's just another nice way of saying old.
No, not at all. I mean, so you've emceed 54 Beatles conventions.
That's right, yes.
Now, describe a Beatles convention. What do we get when we go to that?
Well, the most surprising thing when you go to a Beatles convention is I'm the oldest guy there. When I first started going, I thought it's going to just be old people like me who were first-generation fans.
Right.
But the Beatles are so appealing to younger people.
They really are.
It's, it's not nostalgic. You go along and you see kids who were in their 20s, teens and 20s. They're not nostalgic. You can't be nostalgic if you weren't alive when the Beatles were around. It's the music just appeals to them.
They teach courses in it in college.
They do indeed. And so you get that. And there are people who are from the Beatles world, who are the members of the families or musicians who work with them, and producers, engineers, and people who were in their movies. And then there are also different aspects, historians, and then people get up there and play and perform Beatles songs. It's a lot of fun. In fact, there's a new convention coming up because it's the 50th anniversary of the Beatles on Ed Sullivan.
Wow.
Coming up in February.
Oh, wow, okay, that's
And they're
right.
going to have the convention here in New York City on that exact same weekend. And by one of life's coincidences, next year, the days of the week are exactly the same as they were in 1964. Like the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show on Sunday, February 9.
Wow.
And next year, February 9 is a Sunday.
Perfect. I don't know, are you emceeing this convention?
I will be emceeing this convention. And when people say to me, Martin, you're a Beatles scholar, what does that mean? I normally say, Ringo was the drummer. That's my best recollection. But I just got an amazing gig because very famously, John Lennon was raised by his Aunt Mimi.
That's right.
And she used to say things to him, oh, guitar's all very well as a hobby, John, but you'll never make a living out of it. Now, I have the same thing growing up in my house because I was a fan of the Beatles. And my dad, bless him, passed on now. My dad would always say, Martin, the Beatles is good as a hobby, but you'll never make a living out of it. I'm making a living out of it.
Now, February 9, when is Super Bowl Sunday here in New York?
It's 1 week before.
Okay, so you just
Super
missed
Bowl,
that.
that's a very big sports game. Isn't that like an egg and spoon race or something like that?
Yeah, it's a little bit less hype than the Beatles convention.
Yeah.
But okay, so you just missed that. That's good. But I was going to say, I'm working for the great company DirecTV. I'll be going to the Super Bowl, but I'd like to go to this convention. I'd like to see what happens.
We should bring you there. Actually, I'll be coming in time for the Super Bowl. I'll be coming in 1 week ahead. So I'll make a deal with you, Artie. You get me into the Super Bowl, I'll get you into the Beatles convention.
Can't do it.
You can't do that.
As Robert Duvall said, can't do it, Sally. And the guy, I barely got 2 tickets. I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
I'll try. But
will I ruin everything if I say I don't really care about going to the Super Bowl? But I would come with you to be fun. It would be fun to go with you.
It would be fun. But, it's going to be outside. The first time ever, it's going to be outside in a cold weather city. Yeah. The Super Bowl is usually played in a warm weather like Miami or inside. So
Right.
this is going to be a unique thing that you might not enjoy being outside for it.
Well, I would enjoy the first 3 minutes, I think.
Well, listen, the halftime show, I know you're a big Bruno Mars fan. Halftime show is Bruno Mars, so you'll probably like that.
That would be good. Well, but you see, that's as distinct from cricket. You see, a cricket game, an international cricket game, lasts 5 days for
It
8
does?
hours. 8 hours a day, 5 hours,
5 days?
5 days. And you know why it goes on so long?
Why?
I'll tell you why. Some people have said it's very boring, but the fact is this. The British are not a very spiritual people, and they lacked a definition of infinity.
By that, do you think they're very cynical people?
No, they're just completely lacking in any spirituality. So they invented cricket to give them a definition of infinity, because it just goes on forever and ever.
Yeah, otherwise you'll drive yourself crazy thinking about it.
Do people tailgate for cricket games? Is that part of the charm in the 5 days?
Of course not. No, you're there. You're going to have cucumber sandwiches and tea from China. And
do people get there early for the 5-day?
Yeah, sure they do. And they get there
How
early.
early?
They
Like
get
weeks in advance?
No, not that bad. But they get there mainly because they want to have about 40 pints of warm beer.
Yeah.
Cucumber sandwiches and warm beer.
Yes, it's a perfect.
Wow.
It's a perfect recipe.
I'd love to be in line at the Porta-John there.
Yeah. Well, you know, at the Super Bowl this year, they're not allowing tailgating, supposedly. They're saying,
Why not?
I don't know.
You see, they're taking
there
away
are
all the fun.
mixed messages coming out of the NFL. Some people are saying you can't go outside your parking space, and you can't have grills.
Well, political
so you can
correctness.
lean up against your car and.
Political correctness is running rampant. And this is something I think where the English, especially in comedy, have it over us, where you're not as affected by political correctness as we are. You guys still sort of tell it like it is. You're more honest in your comedy, which is why it's better. I just finally watched the Three Stooges movie that came out a couple of years ago. And I thought the three guys who played them did a fantastic job. I really did. The movie wasn't amazing, but those guys, my God, they did a fantastic job playing the Three Stooges. But at the end, then the Farrelly brothers did it, and those guys are, you know, they're as good as you're going to get with something like that. And I laughed a lot, but I was ultimately a little disappointed. But at the end of the movie, they have two guys come out, two stunt guys who pretend to be Peter and Bobby Farrelly, and they basically tell kids not to do any of that to themselves. Like the whole movie was them hitting each other with pipes and hammers and poking each other in the eye, and they basically tell the kids at the end, look, these were rubber hammers. Look, nothing happens. And here's it with a sound effect. Don't try this because you'll really get hurt. Here's what happens. We really put our fingers. They really
had
did
to
that.
do the
No
disclaimer.
joke. It was
Wow.
a disclaimer fully at the end. And it's just like it loses something.
That's not a disclaimer. That's a liability thing. That was written by a lawyer.
Yeah.
A lawyer sat there and said,
right.
There's going to be liability. We're all going to get sued. Let's put that disclaimer
Exactly.
down.
There's a kid going to hit another kid with a hammer, thinking it can happen. I mean, it really is sort of. What is your thought of that? You're a humorist who, you know, you're not an old guy, but you're not a spring chicken either. What do you think about political correctness? How it's affected comedy?
I think it really has taken some of the fun out of it. I mean, the fact is that comedy does consist of cruelty. There is an element of cruelty. We're making fun of people. You can't make fun of fat people, thin people. You can't make fun of people of colour. You can't make fun of white people. You can't make fun of anybody.
You're right.
Because you might cause offence. There's a famous thing that it reminds me of, actually. The Beatles producer was a wonderful guy called George Martin.
George Martin.
But he used to produce comedy records.
Right.
And he
I didn't know that, really.
Oh, yeah. He produced records with Peter Sellers and other great British comedians. And very famously, he did a version with Peter Sellers of the Beatles song She Loves You, as sung by Dr. Strangelove. She loves you, yeah. You think you make your love, but I saw her yesterday. She's not a hurting kind. Anyway, they were going to bring the record out in Germany.
Right.
And suddenly George Martin came to Peter Sellers and said, the record company won't release it in Germany. He said, why not? He said, well, they said they might offend the Germans.
Unbelievable.
And Peter Sellers turned around and said, that's the point of the
course,
record.
yeah, that's why it was the exact reason we're doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah, Peter Sellers probably would have been annoyed by that. I mean, by the whole thing nowadays.
Now, you know, I've just done something because, you know, I'm a humorist. I wear several hats. But I also do, as you mentioned, I do a lot of producing for Amnesty International.
Right.
And I got the pleasure of working with somebody who I think you like, Bruce Springsteen.
Of course, yeah.
Now, Amnesty International is a human rights organisation. It's, you know, it's there to do research and campaign against human rights abuses. And there's a lot of great rock and rollers who support it. It's like Pete Townsend and U2 and Bruce.
Sure.
Sting and the Police. So they did all these great concerts in the 80s and 90s, but they never got released for home enjoyment. They just put them on the shelf. I don't know why. They played them on TV one time.
They used to do that constantly in the 80s.
Yeah, and they like Live Aid. You never got it on DVD.
Right.
Well, finally, I saw Live Aid finally came out on DVD, and I said, you know, it's crazy. Amnesty International have got all these great concerts. Could we put them out? And I went to Bruce, and I went to Sting, and I went to Bono, and said, could we do this? And they said, yep, sure, go ahead. So that's what's just come out now.
Oh, that's great.
This evening, I brought a long set for you.
Oh, thank you.
There it is.
I'm going to watch this tonight. I'm going to go home and watch this.
Well, you'll have a hard time.
Why?
Because, you know, the trend at the moment is to keeping everything short. You know, kids are watching a 30-second blip on their electric toothbrush. No one's got time anymore.
Right.
This is 17 hours.
Oh, well, I'll watch some of it.
Yeah, you watch some of it. But we put together all the great concerts.
It's Live Aid and the Amnesty shows?
It's not Live Aid. This is all Amnesty International concerts.
Okay.
And it's Bruce, it's you two, all those guys. But in addition, there's only 12 hours of concerts. But then they asked me, would I put together some bonus material? Well, for anybody for bonus material is like 10 minutes. I said, bonus material? That means I can put more stuff on here. So I put another 5 hours of material. We found outtakes and rare performances, and I went to Sting and Bono and Peter Gabriel, and I went to Bruce. I said, you've got to do an interview.
Right.
And, you know, some of them, it's hard to find time to. Bruce was the hardest to get to do an interview, not because he doesn't support Amnesty, he supports it, but he's a busy guy. Right. And I had to dog him for 3 years to get him to do the interview. And I finally caught him in a corner and persuaded him.
Well, that's great. I mean, I can't wait to check. I remember 87 or 88, Springsteen went out with Youssou N'Dour and Tracy Chapman and Sting and Peter Gabriel.
That's it. That's
the tour.
That's one of the ones on here. There's 4 different tours on here and concerts on here. And it was interesting when I got to Bruce, because he's, you know, the rules of protocol, anytime you're at a social event, you don't hustle a guy.
Right.
Well, I do, but you're not supposed to hustle a guy. And I was at a big social event. It was the opening night of the Broadway show that Little Steven had done of the Young Rascals.
Oh, okay.
And I see Bruce there, and I know Bruce a little bit. I've bumped into him socially over the years, but, you know, you've got to give the guy his space. He's out having fun with his wife at a show. But I desperately need him to do the interview. Sting's done it, Peter Gabriel, Bono, everyone's done the interview except Bruce. So I go up to him and I thought, how do I raise this without it looking like a hustle? And I think, finally, I get the idea. I said, hi, Bruce, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. I'm in town, you know, we're doing Sting and stuff like that. I said, by the way, Bruce, you know what we Brits are like? We claim credit for everything. Sting and Peter Gabriel, they're claiming credit for everything you did, man. On that tour, they claim they did everything. And Bruce looked at me and he laughed because he knew I was just like winding him up a little bit to do it. And then a couple of weeks later, they came back to me and said, Bruce will do the interview.
Great.
And he's a great interview. He's a terrific interview.
I know. It's awesome. Yeah. I love hearing him. I love all those guys getting interviewed. So I'm going to take that home and watch whatever I can tonight. And over the next 3 years, I'll finish it. We got to take a break. We're going to come back. More with the great Martin Lewis after the...
The Artie Lange Show, weeknights on Audience, only on DirecTV.